We are going to talk you about the stage number 1 of the biology book. Hope you enjoy the video.
Talk a little bit about biology and its field of action, and also about the characteristics of living beings.
I'm going to talk you a little about biology. This science studies life, atoms, and molecules. The branches derived from biology are anatomy, anthropology, botany, embryology, biomedicine, and so more. Also, biology studies the interaction between living beings, either cooperative or aggressive between them. How did life originate on planet? There are so many theories as like electrical activity in the atmosphere. Others suggest that volcanoes. Also that living beings arrived transported by meteorites or comets. The truth is that until now, everything that has previously happened gave rise to a system based on the deoxyribonucleic, also DNA, and ribonucleic acid, RNA, capable of storing information to create various molecules and edit their modifications. And explain you the characteristics of living beings. There are 8, and we're going to start with organization. In living beings, the components are organized complexly. This means everything on Earth is organized and hierarchized in levels, as nucleic acid, proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, water. The cell is the fundamental unit of life, and each cellular set performs a specialized function that forms tissues. These tissues form organs. These organs form systems. And all of these form an individual organism. We are going to talk about the genetic code. All living beings are share an essential characteristic. This means that the genetic code is a sequence of nitrogenous bases that combine to produce words in a language understandable. The genetic code indicates the sequence of 22 amino acids. They constitute all the proteins in all the organisms on Earth. It's important to highlight that genetic code isn't the same as DNA. Response to stimuli. Perception and response to stimuli that come from the external and internal environment. This means that living beings can respond to different stimuli such as light, sound, temperature, chemical substances, and more. Homeostasis. While everything in the universe tends to chaos, life strives to maintain its balance, even if it had to spend energy to achieve this. Homeostasis refers to the set of self-regulation phenomena that lead to the conservation of steadiness in the composition and properties of the internal environment of an organism that allows it to have a free life. Metabolism. Obtaining and using energy. Metabolism involves the destruction of molecules, that is, catabolism and the formation of new molecules, or anabolism. The catabolism process involves the releasing of energy contained in the chemical bonds by destroying them. By the other side, anabolic processes use the energy obtained through catabolism to build new components, for instance, proteins. Growth. All living beings, to a greater or less extent, increase their volume. That is, they grow. This means growth implies the incorporation of new biomolecules into the organism, which is synthesized for the purpose. And the last one, reproduction. To perpetuate their species, individuals must reproduce themselves. Reproduction implies that the information transmitted from one generation to the next one is done through the inheritance molecule. Asexual reproduction. Its main characteristic is that the descendant is genetically identical to the predecessor. Since sperm and ovules are not involved, therefore is not genetic variability. There are animals, plants, microorganisms that reproduce asexually. The sexual reproduction involves fertilization of two different cells, the sperm and the egg. Its main characteristic is that as the new individual arises from the combination of genetic material of both cells, this means there is genetic variability. Natural selection is enabled. Parasexual reproduction. Genetic variability is achieved through the exchange of DNA that is carried out by conjugation, transduction, and transformation.
The observation of the tiny world began with the invention of the magnifying glasses, which are the rudimentary version of the microscope, which is now called the composite microscope, thanks to its uses of several glasses to magnify objects. The oldest invention of the magnifying lenses took place in the Syrian Empire in 750 BC. Also, Greek, Roman, Egyptian, and Babylonian civilization used and manufactured these magnifying lenses. It wasn't until hundreds of years later that Italian artists carved magnifying glasses and used them as spectacles. Gradually, their carving skills improved, which finished with the invention of the telescope and the microscope.
Who invented the compound microscope? With absolute certainty, we can say that nobody knows the answer. The microscope was invented at the end of the 16th century. Historical evidence points to Zacharias Janssen as the most likely inventor. He had the idea of combining two lenses inserted at the ends of a tube and realized that combining the lenses in this way, he achieved greater magnification ranges. According to the records of the time, the magnification range achieved by this microscope was between 3 to 9 times. Janssen did not foresee the potential of his invention for the science. Who was able to glimpse its importance and use it for scientific purposes was Robert Hooke in 1665. The microscope he used allowed him to reach magnifications up to 50 times. Years later, Anton van Leeuwenhoek developed a new technique to manufacture lenses that allowed him to observe samples with magnifications up to 200 times. However, microscopes were not very popular among scientists due to the aberrations caused by the defects of the lenses and the very nature of the light. Until the 18th century, scientists were able to correct these defects, and in the 19th century it was possible to perfect this microscope, and it became a handy tool, especially for the medical field. The official story begins with Robert Hooke, who in 1665 published the observation he made with the microscope he created. Hooke observed the bark of a cork coat and noticed that its tissue was made up of small spaces which repeated. He gave to these spaces the name of cells, from the Latin cellulae, that is, little chambers. Years later, until Anton van Leeuwenhoek, with the lenses he had crafted, observed and described in more detail cells such as spermatozoa and protozoa. It was not until 1830 that Theodor Schwann and Matthias Schleiden proposed what later became the first postulate of the cell theory. The cell is the elemental unit of plants and animals, and it is the essential basis of life processes. The 19th century was abundant in cellular discoveries. Robert Brown described the nucleus. Johannes Evangelista introduced the term protoplasm. Meanwhile, Rudolf A. von Kolliker identified the mitochondria, and Rudolf Virchow proposed that all cells come from pre-existing cells. This assertion became the second postulate of the cell theory. The work of Louis Pasteur on metabolism cleared the way to the processes of research. Augustus Weismann discovered that both current and ancestral cells are similar in structure and composition. In the 20th century, the first transmission electron microscope was invented. In 1981, Lynn Margulis proposed the endosymbiotic theory, which explains the origin of the eukaryotic cell. Many researchers participated indirectly to generate the postulates of the cell theory. However, 3 of them are recognized as the authors: Schwann, Schleiden, and Virchow. The postulates of this theory affirm that all living beings are made up of cells and the product these cells generate. 2. Every cell comes from a pre-existing one. 3. All vital functions take place between the cell, and only one is enough to generate life. 4. The cell contains the hereditary information for the control of its development, growth, reproduction, and to transmit that information to the next generation. We can add a 5th postulate. The disease begins in the cell.
Structure and function of the cell. The plasma membranes define the boundary between the cell and the environments that surround it. It is a structure that allows it to have individually, even if they belong to a whole or not. With the limits imposed by the plasma membrane, it contains the cytoplasm in which the organisms are involved. Cells have DNA, which is the genetic material in which the information is contained, so the cell can be functional and survive. They contain all the metabolic machinery to fulfill their physiological function. In addition to these characteristics, cells must be able to nourish them and be metabolic output in order to grow, multiply, differentiate if they need to, respond to signals, adapt, and evolve.
I'm going to talk about the type of cells and the levels of organization. The cells divides into prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. Prokaryotics are cells without nucleus. Their genetic material is found in the cytoplasm, in an area called the nucleus. They are unicellular and can be reproduced asexually or parasexually. Prokaryotes can have different forms: coconuts, bacilli, or spiral shape. The morphology is more varied. They can have changing forms: irregular, lobe, flat, rectangular, or square. The components in all prokaryotic cells are plasma membrane, cell wall, cytoplasm, nucleoid, ribosomes, prokaryotic compartments, and according to the type of prokaryote, the cell may have flagella, periplums, capsule, cytoplasmic inclusions, PD, glycocalyx, biofilm, S-layer, plasmids, and mesosome. Regarding the metabolisms, they can have anaerobic or aerobic. The nutrition side, they can be heterotrophs or autotrophs. There is no place in this planet where prokaryotes cannot survive. On the other side, we have the eukaryotic cells. These cells divide into the animal and the vegetal. The most notable difference among eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells are the presence of the nucleus in the eukaryotic cells. The components of the animal cell are plasma membrane, nucleus. Is in here where almost of the cellular DNA is found. Rook endoplasmic reticulum. Thanks to the associated ribosomes in their membranes, the translation of messenger RNA is possible. A smooth endoplasmic reticulum. In the membranes of this organelle takes place a great variety of processes. Golgi apparatus. This organelle ensures that the proteins are functional by performing most of the post-translation modification. Lysosomes are vesicles from the AG that contain large variety of enzymes. Peroximes contain the enzymes necessary for the degradation of hydrogen peroxide. Mitochondria are organelles that have double membrane, internal and external, which function as a powerhouse. The membranous organelles, cytoskeletal elements, provide structural support for all cellular components. Centrosome. From this structure, the microtubules are originated and extended throughout the cytoplasm. Centrioles participate during the mitosis to generate a chromatic spindle and also to cytokinesis. Ribosomes, they are organelles assembled in the nucleus that synthesize the proteins. Cytoplasmic inclusions, they are inert accumulations immersed in the cytoplasm. Now we pass to the plant cell. The plant cell has components similar to those of the animal cells because both are eukaryotic cells. The organelles that have a similar composition and function in both cell types are plasma membrane, nucleus, cytoskeleton, Golgi apparatus, ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, smooth and rough, mitochondria and peroxisomes. Organelles and structures that are found in plant cells are cell wall. This limits the cell compartment and therefore the growth of the cell. Central vacuole. The function of vacuole is to accumulate reserved substance and byproducts of metabolism suspended in a large amount of water. Plastids. Organelles which principal function is to produce and store the chemical compounds used by the cell. Chloroplast. The photosynthesis occurs in these organelles. Leucoplasts are organelles with double membrane, small and spherical, that store colorless substance. Chromoplasts are a variety of plastids that store carotenes or pigments. Amyloplasts, organelles specialized in storing starch. Elioplasts, organelles specialized in the storage of fats. Glyoxysome, specialized peroxines that convert lipids into carbohydrates during the germination of the seeds.
Cellular transport. Everything that enters or leaves a cell has to pass through the cell membrane, which is the organelle that present in all cell types. This process is carried out by the cellular transport. Transports can be classified according to the amount of molecules that pass through the membrane. If they pass one by one, then its transportation can be active or passive. Active. This transport spends energy and goes against gradient of concentration. Passive. This transport does not waste energy and goes in favor of concentration gradient. It can be simple diffusion, facilitate diffusion, and ultrafusion or dialysis. Simple diffusion. The molecule crosses the lipid bilayer. Gases such as carbon dioxide and oxygen pass through freely. Fragile diffusion. The passage of molecules depends on the presence of the integral membrane proteins that allow the passage. These proteins can form channels complex transports.
However, other small polar molecules with no electrical charge, such as water, can pass through the membrane only in small proportion. Large polar molecules with no electrical charge, such as glucose, can pass through it, but only in minimal proportions. Ions have an electrical charge, so they can never pass through the membrane.
Ultrafiltration and dialysis. Water and some cultures pass through the membrane for the hydric pressure. The flow is always from the highest to lowest pressure. Then the cause of the glomerular filtration is the kinesis of the form unique.
Ocytosis is the incorporation of material into the cell. The cell brings molecules or particles into its interior, producing vesicles in the membrane. Exocytosis is the secretion of material produced by the cell. The plasma membranes and a vesicle are fuses releasing the contents of the vesicle.
The first level is that complexity is that of the atom. The atom forms molecules and biomolecules. The biomolecules constitute the organelles and structures. The set of organelles form the functional unit of life, or cell. A set of cells specialized in a specific function form a tissue. The tissue form organs. The organs are grouped into systems, and in a multicellular organism, the systems constitute the individual. A population is made up of individuals of the same species. The community or biocenosis is formed by a set of populations. The grouping of population of all domains, together with abiotic factors, the physical environment, constitute the ecosystem. The biosphere is the total set of ecosystems present on Earth.
All the vital mechanisms, varied as they are, have only one object: to preserve constant and internal environment. Claude Bernal, 1865. Each cell will take care of its self-regulation, that is, a maintaining of its homeostasis. Consider a bacterium, its life depends on preserving its balance. The term homeostasis comes from the union of two Greek words, which in Spanish are translated as homos and stasis. The first refers to similar or equal. The second, state or stability. In the biological context, it refers to the equality of organisms to preserve their internal conditions despite the changing condition to its exterior or interior.
An example that will be familiar to you is the regulation of body temperature. Preserving the balance of functions requires the participation of a series of factors that are in charge of it, and they are the variable, the sensor or receiver, the integer, the set point, and the effector. The response of each current can be stopped once that research the set point, which is called negative feedback, or increase the answer, that is positive feedback.
Hi, I'm going to talk about health and sickness. Health is when our body is finely regulated by mechanisms that allow us to maintain homeostasis. Therefore, disease is when our body lost that balance and homeostasis. Health is the complete well-being in the three areas of the human being: physical, mental, and social. To talk about health in the adolescent, we should expect such well-being at all stages and the regular changes that the adolescent faces. Adolescence is a stage that is characterized by the transition between childhood and adulthood, which implies physical, cognitive, and psychosocial changes. While in puberty, a person develops sexual maturity. The adolescent faces different needs, and those needs make him feel as if he were between two worlds. One in which he still needs to play, affection, high-caloric food, a home, and someone who covers his needs. On the other hand, he may feel the need to look and feel mature, and the adult begins to assign him obligations and responsibilities that he did not have before. These demands may make him think that he is not loved and valued. Adolescents are considered healthy because physically their body has the strength to resist diseases, but also the adolescent sees himself in the middle of many changes that affect him in a significant way. These changes are physical, psychological, and social. Physical changes are the hormonal ones. With them begins the increase of the gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which favors the rise of two essential hormones in reproduction, luteinizing and follicle stimulant. The first helps men start the secretion of testosterone and androstenedione, while in women, the second causes the onset of menstruation. The adrenal gland begins to secrete high levels of androgens, which influence the growth of pubic, armpit, and facial hair, as well as the physical growth, and increase in the amount of fat in the skin that cause body odor. The hormones that predominate in women are the estrogens, while in men are the androgens. These hormonal changes increase emotional sensitivity in adolescents. The sexual maturity is divided into primary and secondary characteristics. The primary consists of the basic organs responsible for human reproduction. The secondary are the physiological signs of sexual maturity, unrelated with the sexual organs, the development of the breast in women and the widening of the back in men, the change of voice, the texture of the skin, muscle development, and body hair growth. Another aspect to be taken in consideration is the state of the brain, since it is the one in charge to carry out basic processes such as emotions, judgments, behavioral and emotional self-control. In adolescence, the brain is still developing. This development ends approximately at the age of 21 years. Younger adolescents tend to use more the amygdala, which is related to emotional and instinctive reactions, as the brain matures, it uses more its frontal lobes, which are related to planning, reasoning, judgment, emotional regulation, and impulse control, which helps to reason more accurately. The underdevelopment of the brain explains the looking for exciting emotions and novelties. This incites the young person to have aggressive behaviors, to consume substances, to face danger, among other risky behaviors. In adolescence, the individual has other emotional necessities, as well as biological changes. For example, the secretion of the melatonin hormone, which indicates to the brain that it is ready to sleep. However, at this stage, the secretion occurs later, so in many occasions, he goes to sleep very late at night and gets up very late in the day. This lack of restful sleep can cause demotivation, irritability, affect concentration, and therefore school performance. Another situation to which the adolescent must adapt is increasing body weight due to the hormonal changes and the importance that the teenagers give to their appearance. In this stage, they need to fulfill the necessity of belonging, but on many occasions the other adolescents make strong criticisms to their physical aspect. If the young person gives too much importance to these criticisms, they might fall into some disorder. Another factor in this stage is the cognitive maturity. Cognition is known as all processes or structures that are related to consciousness and knowledge. Cognitive maturity is achieved when the cognition is a set of processes or mental structures related to awareness and knowledge. Cognitive function, that is the hypothetical deductive reasoning, with which it is possible to develop a hypothesis and develop an experiment. Cognition is also a tool for problem solving. Cognitive maturity has physiological and social implications. The structural changes have to do with the working memory that allows to face the problems and the thinking decisions for solving them. The functional change is related to processes that help to obtain, manage, and retain information. Identity is a characteristic of adolescence. It is recognized as a current notion of the self, which is made up of values, goals, and beliefs. In the search for identity, the individual contemplates the selection and appropriation of values, goals, and beliefs, but also the integration of his physical, social, and biological perceptions. This is the beginning of the process of self-determination and self-conceptualization. If this balance is not achieved and this maturation is not complete, the individual tends to be at risk of illness. To achieve this balance can be from biological reasons, wrong decisions, the lack of conditions, or because his environment complicates it. It's regulated by mechanisms that allow us to maintain homeostasis, and therefore health. Disease is the loss of balance and homeostasis. Since birth, the human being has perceived a series of changes in his body, emotions, and social needs. We have tried to define them and classify those changes in order to face them and give them an answer. Psychoanalytic and psychosomatic conceptions relate illness with the psychological phenomena or with the body. The Greeks defined health as a natural disposition and disease as a natural condition. Illness has its cause in disordered lifestyles or disturbances in the dynamic balance of the physical body. According to philosophy, disease is a fight of the body and its natural resources against a malignant cause. Development of science, it was possible to pinpoint the factors that influence the preservation of health or the appearance of the illness. These factors included public health actions, the care of the environment, human genetics, and the lifestyle, in which the adopted lifestyle has greater importance. The Real Academia Española considers the physical, social, institutional, and spiritual aspects of conceptualizing health and illness. This definition does not only consider health as physical well-being, but for a person to be considered healthy, this person must observe health in the psychic and social aspects. Psychological perspective, health is measured based on normal behaviors that do not interfere with the development of that person's in the different areas of his life. The thesis is related to abnormal behaviors that help explore the emotional disturbances of a person. To determine if a person has mental health or not, we have three origins. One is social, which has to do with the contact with specific groups. There is the organic one, which includes infections, vitamin deficiencies, defects or injuries in the cerebral structure, and other physiological affections. The last one is psychological criterion, which assesses the behavior in order to measure the emotional and mental state of a person.
There are different types of factors: the booster factors, the triggers, the facilitating factors, and the predisposing factors. The booster factors are those to which a person is repeatedly exposed. The triggers are any circumstances that triggers a disease or will generate a health problem. The facilitating factors are the ones that open the way to the onset of a disease. And the predisposing are generators of sensitivities towards an agent that can cause a disease, like the fact that a mother has consumed addictive substances while being pregnant.
Circumstances that affect our health are experienced at every stage of our life, but in adolescence the changes we face involve particular risk. A risk is the proximity of damage, and a factor is the influential magnitude or resistance.
A risk factor endangers the balance between the factors that intervene in health and can cause illness and even death. A risk factor is different than a cause because the factor relates with the disease, like age, and the cause is the event causing the illness, like consuming rotten food may cause stomach ache. The cause and the factor interact with each other and increase the effect of each other. There are different types of risk factors. The behavioral are related to actions and can be reduced or eliminated by choosing lifestyles, like consuming junk food. The physiological involve the body of the person and are related to the genetic, like the body's natural reaction to something specific, like overweight. The demographic are shared with the population in general, like age, gender, and territory where they live. The environmental includes social, economic, cultural, and biological issues like not having access to clean water. And the genetic factors depend on individual genetics. Some diseases have origin in genes like muscular dystrophy. Risk factors are also related to dangerous behaviors, which are behaviors displayed under situations of danger. The tendency of the adolescents to add risk to their behavior is related to three groups. Personal, the own use of defense mechanisms against situations. Precipitators, perception of their experience and the ability to deal with those experiences, and contextual, the ability to differentiate the real from the imaginary. Risk behaviors have double function because they put adolescents to the limit of their health, but it also makes them achieve autonomy. So, it's only harmful if it puts the health in a vulnerable situation. There are as well the protective factors which counteract the effects of the risk factors and reduce the vulnerability of the individual.
The most important factor in the health maintenance is the lifestyle. There might be a genetic predisposition to some diseases, but if the lifestyle is healthy and balanced, the gene of the disease may stay inactive.
Lifestyles are related to personal habits. There are 4 fields of action to determine health, and each one has a role in its conservation. But the one with the bigger impact is the lifestyle, because the way a person leads his life will result in health or illness. Healthy lifestyles promote habits beneficial to all aspects in the life of an individual and help to cope with the threatening situations to avoid physical illness or resist in a better way physical and emotional suffering. There are 2 ways of looking at the behaviors in the styles of life: the pathogens, which increase the risk of getting sick, and the immunogens that help to be less vulnerable to some diseases. There are 7 behaviors that lead to health. Number 1 is to sleep between 7 and 8 hours a day. Number 2 is to have breakfast every day. Number 3 is to perform 3 meals a day. Number 4 is to maintain body weight within acceptable limits. Number 5 is to practice physical activity. Number 6 is not consuming alcohol. And number 7 is no smoking.